I'm Claire Donovan, lead software engineer at Helix Forge, a mid-sized tech company based in Austin, Texas. For 11 years straight, I was the first to arrive and the last to leave. No one asked me to do that. I just couldn't bear to see the system crash every weekend, and if I wasn't there, it absolutely would. I wrote the original framework for the data sharing platform Helix Forge still runs on, but my name never once appeared on a press release. They wrote that Carter, the CEO and founder, was the mastermind behind all technical architecture. Carter, who couldn't tell the difference between a security protocol and a local network. Every line of optimized code, every emergency backup at midnight, every silent patch to close a hole before investors noticed. That was all me. And yet, I was only known in the office by one title, the Godmother. They laughed when they said it, usually when I brewed fresh coffee, fixed code disasters left behind by careless interns, or dealt with problems no one else wanted to touch. I've trained nearly 30 new hires over the years. 10 of the men I mentored are now team leads or technical directors. Me? I still sit at the same desk in the corner, using a 4-year-old laptop no one's bothered to replace. For a long time, I believed they didn't mean to overlook me. I thought if I just kept doing better, one day they'd notice. But then I saw it clearly. During an important meeting when I presented an idea, Kyle, who joined 2 years after me, interrupted, repeated what I had just said, and Carter slapped the table, laughing, "Brilliant, Kyle, you should lead this team." I said nothing. I had learned to swallow my anger. Every suggestion ignored, every initiative rerouted to someone else. I was the only one who understood the entire system inside and out. Yet when something broke, they called Marcus, who only knew how to email me. What's going on? 3 months ago, the company began prepping for a high-stakes project, a live demo of a new platform for investors in California. Leadership called it a golden fundraising opportunity, and who was assigned to ensure every technical function ran flawlessly? Me. No official recognition, no raise, no assistant. I had to debug the system, train 3 clueless interns on cybersecurity basics, and write the technical slides for the demo, even though Carter told me, keep it simple, Claire, nothing too code heavy, okay? Investors don't want to hear programming talk. I knew they needed me. I saw it in their panicked eyes every time the system crashed during testing, and they always turned to me, silently hoping I'd work magic. But they would never admit it. Carter would only pat me on the shoulder after a crisis, like a waiter who just cleared a messy table. "Nice job, Claire, as always." I had gotten used to it. Even felt grateful, sometimes, just to have something to do. But by then, something in me had started to shift. Quietly, sharply, like a switch flipped in the dark. I no longer believed I needed their validation to know my worth. But I did know this. If they dared to discard me once they'd used me up, they'd regret it, because this system couldn't run without me. The week leading up to the presentation in San Francisco was suffocatingly tense. I was in charge of system architecture, security integration, real-time data stream testing, and building a fully interactive simulation so investors could engage with the product directly. Every click, every response, every chart was programmed to react in under half a second. I spent 3 nights sleeping at the office, surviving on coffee, my eyes burning from constant screen glare. But when the presentation role assignments were posted on Slack, my name wasn't on the list. Instead, the person tagged to coordinate technical walkthroughs with investors was Trevor. Trevor had been with Helix Forge for 8 months. He came from a marketing agency. His coding skills weren't terrible, but far from exceptional. What he did have, though, was an unbeatable advantage. Tall frame, neatly parted blonde hair, confident speech, and above all, Carter's favoritism. I walked into the internal meeting room to get clarity. Carter was sitting there with a matcha smoothie and that practiced corporate smile. "Claire," he said, "you've done an incredible job. But this time, I want to bring a fresh, youthful energy to the presentation. You know investors care a lot about appearance." I looked him straight in the eye. I built the entire system. Trevor doesn't understand the back-end architecture. If they ask about security protocols or data flow optimization, who's going to answer? Carter shrugged. We'll do some run-throughs, just keep it light. Investors like simplicity. Don't go too deep into the technical stuff. I didn't say another word, but inside, something cracked. Not because Trevor was chosen, but because I now understood the real message. I was no longer part of the long-term vision. In the following days, I was slowly removed from high-level meetings. Meetings I used to lead were now happening without a single invite. When I asked, the assistant chuckled, probably just a calendar mix-up. It wasn't. I saw the shift clearly. Every time I walked into a room, conversations stopped. Eyes darted. Documents were quickly flipped over. That feeling, like walking into a space where people had just been talking about you and didn't have time to hide it. What disturbed me most happened late one afternoon. I discovered the system had been accessed using a temporary admin credential, the kind only I or the security team could assign. I traced the IP. It came from Carter's office. No notice, no explanation. That night, I went home earlier than usual. I cooked a simple dinner, but couldn't eat. My mind spun with one question. What were they building behind my back? I opened my personal laptop and accessed the sandbox environment I kept, the one I used to test deployments before they went live. I noticed lines of code duplicated into a new development branch, a branch I didn't have permission to access. That only meant one thing: someone was creating a replacement system, and I wasn't part of the plan. They didn't just want to cut me out of the demo. They were preparing to replace me entirely. I shut the laptop, stepped out onto my balcony, and looked down the quiet street in North Loop. A moving truck was slowly backing into the lot. I stood there for a long time, holding a mug of tea that had long gone cold. The sting of betrayal quickly gave way to something colder, sharper. If they thought they could push me out of something I'd built with my own hands, they had no idea what I'd done to protect it. Not out of revenge, but out of principle, out of fairness. Monday morning, 3 days before the official demo at the Grand Continental Hotel, I walked into the office at 7:15. Everything looked normal, but the atmosphere had shifted. No casual chatter, no steady typing sounds. Just a stifling silence, like someone had quietly slammed an important door shut. As I turned on my computer, a new email popped up from HR. Subject: internal meeting, this morning, addressed to me and only me. I knew. The moment I saw that subject line, I knew. I didn't open any files. I just sat still for a moment, then stood up and walked toward the conference room at the end of the hall. The frosted glass door was ajar. Inside, Lucy, the HR director, sat waiting, along with Carter. Neither of them looked at me when I entered. No one offered a seat. Still, I pulled out a chair, sat down straight, and folded my hands calmly on the table. Carter cleared his throat. Claire, we'll get straight to the point. The company is going through restructuring. The executive team has reviewed long-term roles, and, unfortunately, your position no longer aligns with the company's future direction. Lucy nodded like a machine. You'll receive a severance package as outlined. All documents are prepared. I looked at them. No anger, no panic, just a cold, hollow weight rising in my chest. Doesn't align, I repeated. I just finalized the entire interactive architecture for a multi-million-dollar project. The system is running at under 0.4-second response time. I implemented dual-layer security and wrote the most efficient failover sequence we've ever had. And you're saying I no longer fit? Carter glanced at Lucy, then back at me. We appreciate your contributions, but it's time for the company to move in a new direction, with a more flexible, more culturally integrated team. I let out a soft laugh, not amusement. The kind of laugh you make when someone stabs you so cleanly you admire the technique. So that's it. No farewell, no thank you email, not even a line of acknowledgement. Carter straightened his collar. Claire, you're a professional. We trust you'll handle this with dignity. I stood, calm as ever, reached into my bag, took out the company laptop and placed it gently on the table. All documentation, source code, backups, and demo scripts are on the device. Everything runs fine. But you should know, the system operates under a conditional logic. Lucy frowned. What does that mean? I didn't answer, just smiled. I'm sure Carter knows. Carter swallowed hard. For a brief moment, I saw something flicker in his eyes. Something I hadn't seen since the company hit its growth peak. Worry. Is there anything else? I asked, my voice softer than ever. Lucy shook her head. HR will escort you to the first floor. Standard procedure. I nodded. I don't need an escort. But if it makes you feel safer, that's fine. I walked out without looking back. Eyes dropped as I passed. No one spoke. No one got up. Only the sound of my shoes echoed on the polished tile floor. Downstairs, I didn't head home right away. I crossed the street to a cafe, the same one where I'd taken Carter years ago for our first meeting about distributed data systems. I chose the seat by the window, ordered an espresso, and set my phone face down on the table. I wasn't in a rush. No need to check anything. I knew exactly what would happen. 8 minutes after my access was revoked and a different user logged into the system, the safeguard code would trigger. Not a destructive code. I'd never wanted to harm anything. I just wanted to retain the right to decide. Now it was their turn to face that choice. I took a sip of coffee, stared out the window, no smile, no tears, just a weight lifting, not anger, but release. The wall clock at the cafe read 8:33 in the morning as I set my espresso cup down for the third time. Across the street, the Helix Forge building stood still, its glass reflecting the soft morning sun like nothing had happened. But I knew, within less than 2 minutes, the identity check sequence would trigger. I hadn't done anything illegal. I didn't delete data. I didn't damage the infrastructure. I had simply set up a personal security mechanism, a tether, linking the system to the original admin ID. If that ID was deactivated, all access to the demo environment would freeze, switching to read-only mode with auto-generated error feedback. I had written that script during a weekend in February when Carter denied approval for a security update but still let Trevor and Brent access the main repository. I never intended to use it. Back then, I just thought, if they were careless, at least the system could protect itself. 8:35, the first message popped up on my phone. It was from Chloe, a young back-end engineer I had mentored. Chloe, is something going on? The demo platform is showing an authentication loop error. Brent can't log in. None of us can. Was there an update you forgot to commit? I typed slowly. Claire, everything was complete and stable when I handed it over. You should ask Carter. I set the phone down. I didn't wait for a reply. I knew exactly what was happening inside. Brent sitting in front of the monitor, frowning at the red error message. Authentication loop detected. Admin privileges required. Access denied. I could picture Carter behind them, repeatedly asking, "Why can't you log in? Did she leave the wrong password?" And Brent, only good at copying scripts and delivering slides, stammering, "I think, maybe it's a sync issue?" At 8:45, an email arrived from Lucy. Subject, urgent, demo system issue. The message was short. Claire, if you know anything about the current system status, please contact us immediately. The CEO is requesting an urgent response. I didn't reply. At 8:58, my phone rang. Carter. I let it ring. Then came the message. Carter, if you're upset, we can talk. I need your help. The demo starts at 10. Investors are already here. They can't see this kind of system error right now. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath. His final sentence wasn't an apology. It was a plea, rooted in panic, a desperate attempt to salvage something he didn't build and didn't understand. 9:12. Another message from Chloe. Claire, did you set some kind of protection mode? The tech team tried everything and can't break through the security lock. Brent and the server team are stuck. Trevor is shouting in the hallway. Carter just canceled the first investor trial session. I stared at the screen, feeling empty, not satisfied, not smug, just a strange stillness, like someone had finally turned off the noise I'd lived with for 10 years. 9:38, Carter called again. This time, I answered. His voice was hoarse, tense. Claire, I'm sorry. I really didn't expect things to go this far. You know I value you. I never meant to push you out of the project. It was pressure from the board. But right now, can you come back and help us? I need you. I stayed silent for a few seconds, then replied, my voice soft as air. You don't need me. You need someone who'll let you manipulate the system however you want. I'm not that person anymore. And Claire, I hung up. I didn't need an invitation back. I didn't need a title. I didn't need an honorary role. What I needed was fairness. And that morning, I knew I had claimed it in the only way they couldn't control, with intellect, preparation, and self-respect. I didn't go home that afternoon. After the call with Carter, I wandered through the familiar streets of East Austin, where small shops still displayed hand-painted signs and cafes played music from old record players. I needed quiet. Not to think, but to calm the quiet storm building inside me. A mix of relief, numbness, and something that almost resembled regret. At 6:15, I sat alone in a corner booth at Dusty Bean, watching the last light of day spill across the wooden floor. My phone buzzed steadily on the table. Messages came in from every direction. Claire, I don't know what happened between us, but I need you to come back. We can arrange a proper title. CTO, full authority over engineering. Just show up and everything will be fine. Carter can't manage. Investors are furious. One pulled out right after the meeting. This is spinning out of control. Carter, 6:27 p.m. I underestimated you. That's on me. But please, don't let the company fall apart like this. Give me a chance to make things right. I didn't respond. Not a single message. No return call, no mention of the script or access rights. Everything I had to do, I had already done. There was nothing left to prove. At 7 o'clock, I received a message from Chloe. Chloe, 7 o'clock p.m. Claire, I know it's not my place, but I'm really sorry about how they treated you. I just wanted you to know you've always been the real leader to me. I touched the screen gently, hesitated, then replied, Thank you. I'm okay. Just do what's right. For yourself. Shortly after, an email from the tech department came in. Subject, urgent, root access system validation request. I skimmed it. They had called in outside consultants, but no one could figure out the security framework I'd put in place. The problem wasn't in the code. It was in the design. The system refused to hand over full control without a personal verification sequence only I could trigger. Carter was now facing exactly what he had always dismissed. The reality of a system built not for show, but for actual resilience. And that kind of system couldn't be undone by a last-minute apology. I didn't feel triumphant. There was no grand revenge, just a long silence, like the sound of a final door closing and realizing the space behind it had only been filled by blind loyalty. At 10:43 p.m., Carter's last message appeared. Carter, 10:43 p.m. I've spoken with the board. If you come back, you'll have full authority. I'll step away from engineering, stick to external affairs. You can redesign the entire thing. Just think of it as your company. All you have to say is yes. I placed the phone face down on the table. I didn't need to say no. Silence had already spoken for me. The next morning, I woke at 8 o'clock, opened the curtains, and let soft sunlight pass through the frosted glass. I no longer had to rush into an office, no more worrying about server failures, no more hearing empty praise given to others for work I had done. I made coffee and sat down at my personal workspace, a small, simple corner with my own laptop and a file labeled Orion Project, Draft 1. Not Helix Forge, not a system waiting to use me in crisis. This was something I was building for myself. No flash, no investor bait, a lightweight platform serving real needs. Written by someone who no longer needed to prove anything. 3 days after Helix Forge officially lost its major investors and the engineering team was forced to suspend the demo project indefinitely, I received a message from an unexpected name, Owen Grant. Owen had worked as a UI engineer at Helix Forge for nearly 4 years. He was the only one on the dev team who had ever asked me, "Is there anything I can help with?" and meant it. Nearly a decade younger than me, Owen had a quiet sharpness, an ability to recognize injustice that most others in the company chose to ignore. "Owen, I know this might be bad timing, but if you're thinking of building something new, I want to hear it, because I believe in you." I invited him to Rust in Rome, a small cafe in Hyde Park where I used to escape on days when the office became too heavy. He arrived right on time, wearing a simple button-down, a crossbody laptop bag, and a sharper look in his eyes than the last time I saw him. "I have a system architecture draft from 5 years ago," I began, sliding a printed folder across the table. "Back when Helix Forge was still small, I proposed an internal sharing platform with built-in encryption, no reliance on external cloud services, designed for small organizations like libraries, community clinics, and educational groups." Carter dismissed it, said it wasn't sexy enough for investors. Owen flipped through a few pages, his expression shifting from relaxed to focused. "Do you realize if this is implemented right, it could impact an entire grassroots network? Not everyone needs something flashy like Helix Forge. They just need something clean, simple, and that doesn't sell their data." I smiled. "Exactly, and this time I don't need anyone's permission to build it." We called the project Rootline, a lightweight, no-frills platform built on 3 principles: security, simplicity, and honesty. No ads, no data harvesting, no external integrations unless absolutely necessary. Rootline was designed to do one thing well: connect small teams through a clean digital space they could trust. Owen handled the front-end, user interface, and experience flow. I took over the infrastructure, security protocols, encrypted data handling, and system logic. We worked late nights from my studio apartment, sitting on the floor with cold pizza and iced tea, sketching interface drafts, writing code, and testing each module piece by piece. No imposed deadlines, no boss breathing down our necks, no hollow corporate emails, just 2 people, a single idea, and the pure freedom to build something real. A week later, we had our first testable version. The interface was crisp, the system stable, and the secure file sharing worked flawlessly, even on weak mobile connections. I sent demos to 3 local groups: a public library in Galveston, a homeschool educator group in Vermont, and a community clinic in Flagstaff. None of them asked about investment value, growth potential, or quarterly revenue. They asked only one thing: can we start using this next week? And I knew, this time, I was on the right path. By the 3rd week, Owen received an email from a VC named Lydia, someone who had once declined to fund Helix Forge but had apparently kept an eye on side projects. Her message was brief. "I heard about Rootline. I'd like to meet both of you. Not to buy, just to understand." I didn't know where it would lead, but I knew this time I would walk into that room from a completely different place. No longer the support engineer hiding behind a slide deck, I was Claire Donovan, the person who built the system from scratch, without permission, without needing recognition to know I was enough. Rootline wasn't revenge. It was a reminder. Integrity, done quietly, still echoes. 2 months after Rootline officially opened its beta access, I received a forwarded link in an email from Lydia, the investor who had quietly supported us with workspace and razor-sharp insight. The headline read, "Helix Forge faces leadership crisis as 2 more tech directors resign." I clicked the article. Gone were the polished words that once filled Carter's PR releases. In their place were blunt quotes from former employees. "The internal culture has lost direction. No one takes responsibility. The talented ones leave. Those who stay keep quiet out of fear." Carter wasn't mentioned by name, but anyone who had worked there knew exactly whose shadow loomed behind closed meetings and quiet exclusions. I didn't feel joy, no sense of victory. What I felt was clarity. What I had always sensed but couldn't prove had finally surfaced as undeniable truth. Helix Forge hadn't collapsed because of a few lines of code. It broke apart because its foundation was already rotting from within. Manipulation, arrogance, and a deep disregard for the people who actually kept it running. That afternoon, I stood at the whiteboard in Rootline's shared workspace, a small studio on the second floor of Eastside Creative, where the light from a wide window always landed squarely on my desk. Owen was fine-tuning the user flow for a community education group from Minnesota. He turned to ask, "Do you think we should add accessibility support for visually impaired users in the file sharing module?" I nodded. Add it. If our system isn't accessible to everyone, then no matter how perfect it is, it's meaningless. A week later, Rootline was adopted by a network of county hospitals in Colorado for internal shift coordination. They had previously used a commercial platform that charged per user and harvested their data. "Your system feels like the private space we've always hoped for," the coordinator wrote in a thank you email. I read that sentence 3 times. Not because it was long or complex, but because I realized, in over a decade of working, no one had ever said anything remotely like that to me. Not when I patched a critical security breach at 3 in the morning. Not when I saved a multi-million-dollar demo from disaster. Owen placed a cup of hot ginger tea next to my laptop, saying nothing. We'd worked side by side almost daily for months now, but never once tried to label whatever this was. It was just warm enough, real enough, quiet enough. I no longer lost sleep trying to prove myself. I no longer looked at others being promoted and wondered, what more must I do for them to finally see me? Those questions had stayed behind in the hallways of Helix Forge, along with my old business card, access badge, and the company laptop I'd once set down with deliberate calm. Now, each morning, I woke up, made coffee, opened my computer, and checked the dashboard as new user groups quietly appeared. I knew I was building something meaningful. And that was more powerful than any empty praise, stronger than any hollow title, more lasting than every false promise whispered in carpeted conference rooms. One evening, while passing by a startup conference downtown, I spotted Carter stepping out of a side lounge. Dark suit, visibly older, with none of the swagger he used to wear so effortlessly. He didn't see me, and I didn't step aside. We passed each other like strangers who might have known each other in a distant life, in a place I no longer belonged. I didn't look back. And I didn't need to, because finally I understood. Some doors were never meant to reopen, and some places, just walking away from them is already a victory. Claire Donovan, once the forgotten figure in the shadows, now quietly building something clear, not from anger, but from peace. Claire Donovan's story is a powerful reminder that silence isn't always weakness. Sometimes it's the strongest move you can make. When she was dismissed, excluded, and betrayed by the very place she helped build, she didn't seek loud revenge. Instead, Claire rebuilt from the ground up, guided by her values and integrity. In real life, no one can take away your worth unless you give it up. Sometimes the quiet way you walk away is the loudest answer. What do you think about Claire's journey and the way she chose to face injustice? What would you have done differently? Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to follow the channel for more heartfelt stories about family and life.